I saw this story, and I guess it's been talked about a little bit since the beginning of the week, right? This idea that a condo in Griffintown worth about $568,000 ballpark, let's call it 570 for argument's sake. You might not consider that affordable housing, a $570,000 condo in Griffintown, but apparently the city of Montreal did.
That's crazy.
Because the person who bought it managed to get a $15,000 grant from the city because that was affordable housing in their opinion. And then I believe, if I understand the story correctly, then went ahead and rented that apartment or sought to rent it for $2,900 a month. Now, obviously, when you see something with respect to affordable housing and you see the number 560 or 70,000 next to it, something doesn't compute. So we're going to try to get some more details on this. Ted Rutland's an associate professor at the Department of Geography, Planning and Environment at Concordia, and he's on the line right now. Ted, thanks so much for being here this afternoon. My first question, I guess, is this just simply a mistake, one mistake on the city's part that just got caught, or is there more to it than that?
It would be so great if it were just a mistake, but this is actually a systemic problem within two different policies. And so I hope I don't lose people in the details here. But this unit that was sold for, we're going to round it and say it was $550,000. There's two policies at work there and two different problems. So first, the city has an affordable housing program where basically what they're doing is they're saying in new condo developments, we want developers to provide a certain percentage of affordable housing, of affordable units, so affordable condos. And we're not providing a subsidy. We're just saying, developer, please provide some units that are affordable. And they make it work. You know, they cut costs on the kitchen or the appliances or whatever, or they sell the units that are facing on an alleyway. And so this counted as part of the city's affordable housing units. And of course, people are asking, well, how is that affordable? And they should ask, how is that affordable? And how should a unit that costs this much be tabulated as a kind of achievement of this administration, saying we built, a certain number of affordable housing units during our time? The second issue is the subsidy. So since 2018, the city has had a subsidy mostly for new home buyers, and you can get a subsidy of up to $15,000. But when we look at this unit, which was purchased for around $550,000, that's not unusual at all, because the maximum sales price for a unit, if you want the subsidy, is $725,000.
What?
So people who are spending people who have enough money to spend up to $725,000 on a condo unit are getting up to $15,000 from the city to finance their purchase. And, all of us are paying for this. Even, a low-income tenant, they're not paying property taxes themselves, but they're paying rent to enable their landlord to pay property taxes. So we're all financing this.
How is this happening? Obviously, everyone hearing you say up to $700,000 and change is going, wait a second, there's something wrong somewhere. How is this possible?
Well, this is part of a program that is meant to enable first-time home owners to get into the property market. It's meant to, quote-unquote, keep families on the island. And keeping families on the island sounds like a really good idea. But if we look closely at this, there's been about 1,000 subsidies since 2018 that have gone to people buying existing family-sized housing units in the city. And most of what's happening there is apartments in, triplexes, fourplexes, et cetera, are being converted into condos, and someone's buying them for $700,000 and getting a subsidy from the city. Well, who lived there before that family bought it? It was a renting household. So you've eliminated a rental unit for a family, and you've subsidized the creation of a condo unit for a family, and you've called that keeping families on the island.
And now it's back on the rental market as a luxury property for $2,900 a month. Ted, does the purchaser's income come into play at all in any of this?
Good question. It depends on the year in which. So for the city's affordable housing program, there's no upper limit on the income, but for the subsidy, there are certain limits.
Okay.
So with the subsidy, yes. There are also supposed to be checks and balances. There is supposed to be a check that says that you live in this unit for a certain amount of time, that you don't rent it out.
Right.
But the very excellent reporting by Journal de Montréal in their enquête division found that there are rarely any checks to make sure that people are still living in the unit or that they haven't sold it for an enormous profit. And that's what we're seeing here. And so not only are we subsidizing people who can afford a very expensive condo, we're subsidizing them to have a real estate operation where they're making real estate profits, renting to some other Montreal household.
Well, and let's be specific. In this case, the owners come from Ontario. They have 2 other condos in downtown Montreal and then 2 single-family homes in Val-Morin. Their properties are worth over $2 million, I believe, or around $2 million. So I don't understand how they're even remotely eligible for these kinds of subsidies.
Yeah, someone might say that they're not people who need public subsidies, that they don't need subsidies from, ordinary people like you and I or people who are really struggling to pay the rent. And if you contrast, this is millions and millions of dollars that are going into this. If you contrast this with, supports for people who are unhoused, I mean, this program is about 100 times bigger than supports for unhoused people. And what I say when I teach a housing class is that if you support people who are literally at the bottom of the sort of social pyramid, if you support people who don't have a home to get housing, that actually benefits everyone. But if you have this strategy where you're using public money to help people to get into the property market, you end up with abuses like this, and it's not clear what housing problem this actually solves.
Well, so you're describing a situation, Ted, which to me is good in theory, but obviously failed in execution. We don't know what happens to a property after the fact. Yes, it was designed for one thing, but it ends up being another. Is the administration, they're aware of it now, but is there a plan to change this somehow?
They keep saying that they're going to put in place some kind of checks and balances. They announced that they were going to do that about a year ago. I'm trying to get information from the city to ask them how many verifications they've actually done, but they're taking a really long time to get back to me. I think there's a real lack of oversight of these programs. We haven't seen, we have an annual report from the Public Transit Authority. We have an annual report from the police. We have an annual report from all kinds of institutions, but we don't have an annual report for these kinds of programs that are supposed to be solving a very, very real problem that we face, which is housing affordability. We don't have very much public information about what's happening on the ground at all.
I just want to ask one other thing. Let's say I walked out tomorrow, right, as an investor, and I wanted to buy a property, and say that property was worth $450,000, and it was a home, and I go to the city. Can anyone apply to get this grant, and what do you need to do in order to qualify for it?
Well, the first thing is it has to be your first time buying property. There are some sort of caveats there. If it's your first property in quite a long time, like if you've been a renter for, I think, 10 years or longer, you can still get a unit. And if you're buying a unit for the first time that requires space for kids, you're eligible.
Okay.
But yeah, for the most part, you just have to have a certain, and I think there is now a maximum income level. But the hardest thing, honestly, is to find a unit that comes in under their maximum value. Because if you're looking for a condo for a couple, the maximum price is $380,000. And that's a lot of money, but it's actually pretty hard to find a condo for that value. So it's really at the upper end that it works. Like the upper end, you can get a family unit with a maximum value of $725,000. And so that's where a lot of this program is going to, because it's going to be a family, but no one's going to check to see that your family actually lives there, are they?
Mm.
Wow.
So the program itself is flawed. Furthermore, the execution of the program is flawed. So what's the solution here? We need a new program and we need better execution, I guess.
Well, I think when we're talking about the affordable housing program, where they're just asking developers to create some units that aren't super expensive, it's not a powerful policy, because what's defined as affordable is usually 10% below the average property value in a neighborhood, and that's not affordable for most people. But the city isn't subsidizing that; they're just asking developers to do something. I think it's a good policy. It's fine. But if we're talking about subsidies for first-time homeowners, clearly we're giving a lot of money away to people who are doing quite well. And I think that if more citizens knew what's going on with this, people would roundly reject it. And I think we could have a larger discussion about how we want to use the public money that we have to address really huge problems in our housing system. And I think most people would suggest that money should be channeled more towards people who are really struggling, which might mean that we have to have a different kind of conversation about how people are going to get into the property market. I mean, this is a time, right, where there's kind of a crisis about people, middle-class people who their parents own property. They sort of expect to buy property. And with housing values at the level they are, they're realizing that they might not be able to get into the housing market. I think that we need to, if we're really going to have that as a goal, that everybody, can own property, we need to have a really big discussion about that and address that problem head on. This kind of policy isn't addressing it at all, and it's not addressing needs sort of at the bottom end of the sort of income spectrum at all.
Well, let's at least hope that this story, kind of glaringly obvious, I think, to a lot of people that something is wrong here, gets someone's attention, and maybe this begins that conversation or takes it to the next level. We could at least hope that. Ted, thank you so much. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks for devoting some time to this story.
You bet. Ted Rutland over at Concordia University. And yeah, maybe this is what it takes, right? Shine the spotlight on this and go, wait a sec, something here doesn't make sense.
I feel it's, we always are looking for an excuse to speak to the mayor. I feel like if she's looking at these numbers and the way this program is actually rolling out and who's benefiting from it, surely she'd want to do something about it.
Let's see what happens.